Now let's turn to the conflict in Ukraine, because it looks like the country's war effort against Russia has been given a boost. Germany, France and others have agreed to join the US and the UK by allowing weapons of limitless range to be sent to Kyiv. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that this means that Ukraine can now defend itself by attacking military positions inside Russia. The change follows another night of heavy Russian missile and drone strikes across Ukraine and the stalling of peace talks between Ukraine and Russia.
In response, Russia called it...
Well, for more on this, let's speak now to the international affairs analyst, Dr. Laskiewicz, who joins me on the line from London. Good to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. I expect this move will be welcomed by Kyiv, but what impact will this removal of restrictions have on the war?
Well, unfortunately, it is another escalation, precisely what was not wanted. It is perfectly true that Russia is missiling Ukraine. Ukraine has missiles to missile Russia back to some degree. But now, of course, with unlimited possibilities, the implication is that Ukraine will use this. And if it does, then sooner or later, there'll be a further escalation by the Russians, which is precisely what was not wanted, because each escalation takes us closer to World War III, as indeed I predicted in my books before. There is another aspect of this. At what point does a country declare war? The supplies now from Europe, from Germany, for example, are becoming slightly more substantial and unlimited. At what point will Russia decide that it's being under attack from other countries apart from Ukraine? These are the imponderables. And the other one is, it's unclear what America makes of this. Previously, Donald Trump has not wanted an escalation, and now this is happening. And the question is, will he stay, will he add to it, or will he walk away?
Well, just listening to you there, your analysis is essentially that things on the battlefield are likely to escalate from here, with both sides essentially preparing for new offensives. I mean, that suggests that efforts to stop the war are now stalled.
Unfortunately, they appear to be dead in the water, yes. We are waiting for the Russians to formally send over their ideas for a truce. Although they're quite well known, they want to keep all the territory they've occupied and more besides. They want to recognize de jure. They want Ukraine neutralized with no Western support, in particular not being part of NATO. All of this is quite unacceptable to Ukraine, which has got counter terms, as we well know, that Russia should leave all the occupied territories, all of which is, of course, unacceptable to Russia. So therefore, for 3 years on into the war, we are no closer to any peace, no closer to any truce. And now the key question is, what will Donald Trump do? He has stated, of course, previously finished the war in a day. That is now apparent nonsense. But nevertheless, he does have the possibility of doing something. One such would be, of course, to supply further sanctions, to invoke further sanction against Russia, which he has threatened to do so. So now we're waiting to see what President Donald Trump will do.
And in terms of the battlefield, you may have touched on this briefly earlier. Do you think it'll shift the balance of this war in Ukraine's favor? Because the Ukrainians reckon they'll now be able to destroy Russian weapons before they cross the border and approach Ukrainian trenches.
Yes, I think that there's undoubtedly this is a help for Ukraine. It's not a war winner, but it certainly is an improvement. And of course, it begs the question or rather prompts the question, what will Russia do? This is the problem with escalations. It's not just one side escalating, sooner or later the other side too. So therefore, the question is, what will Russia do militarily, as opposed to America doing economically or diplomatically? And we've yet to see what President Putin states about this. The worry for me is that sooner or later he'll use this as an excuse to spread the war out to other countries, because if he's being missiled by German missiles, why shouldn't he missile Germany back? That is the problem. This is the danger to which, as far as one can tell, the whole of Europe appears to have blithely simply ignored.
And is there any sense of when these long-range weapons will be coming to Ukraine?
I think that it's not going to obviously be in a few days, but unfortunately, it will be relatively soon because Germany have simply taken the wraps off, and therefore, as missiles and aid is arriving in Ukraine all the time, in a sense, it could even be within this week that they have some missiles they can so use. The problem here is that, of course, what will Russia do immediately? We'll find out today and tomorrow, of course, what's left of today, what the Russian response will be. And the key point is when they are first used, and this obviously Ukraine will want to do sooner rather than later, what the Russian response will be.
So, in summary, would it be accurate to say that the focus, at least from the European perspective, is back on trying to defeat Russia in this war?
Yes, they are thinking in terms that Ukraine can hold out, and therefore no more territory will be lost in that sense of victory. But these are actually weapons which are defensive in nature and therefore will not help to recover any territory. As such, as it will be impossible to recover territory, they will bring about possibly a kind of stalemate. What is lacking, of course, from Ukraine's side is the ability to push the Russians out of all the occupied territories. So in that sense, it's not victory, but rather a draw. But it does mean Ukraine will be losing no further territory, assuming all this works. The key point is what the Americans will do, what their arms will do. If Donald Trump were, for example, to pull out the satellite, the Starlink connection, then Russia will be back on top again.
And just briefly, no word in terms of how Russia is reacting to this. I mean, I'm not talking about what they're going to do on the battlefield, but just in terms of verbally, what they're saying about this.
No, there is no indication for a very simple reason. Russia never reacts quickly. It always digests and pre-thinks what it's going to do. They never shoot off their mouths in the sense that President Donald Trump does. Putin not only rehearses whatever he has to say, but he has committees, he meets, he discusses. It's always a measured response, carefully thought through from the Russian side. So there'll be no immediate response in that sense. But it will come soon, and I expect it to be rather belligerent in tone and indeed aggressive.
Dr. Laskiewicz, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the International Affairs Analyst. He was talking to me on the line from London.